On May 14, 1948, David Ben-Gurion declared the establishment of the State of Israel, while behind him hung a portrait of Theodor Herzl between two Israeli flags. In his speech, he credited Herzl as the founder of the Jewish state. In the first moment of Israeli history, the Prime Minister felt it necessary to thank a European journalist who had died 44 years before. What was so special about Herzl was that he defied all odds. All Herzl had was the power of his idea. He believed that if the Jewish people were to have a state of their own, anti-Semitism, which was becoming increasingly prevalent at the time, would cease to exist. Herzl theorized that if he could get the Jewish European philanthropists to support him, then the Jewish people would be soon to follow. So Herzl set off to meet with Baron Hirsch, one of the richest men in the world at the time. He pitched his idea by reading a 22-page pamphlet detailing the Jewish state. However, after only 6, he was laughed out of the room. It just didn't seem plausible. However, Herzl didn't give up. He edited his pamphlet and titled it An Appeal to the Rothschilds, who were the most affluent Jewish family in Europe, but he never managed to secure a meeting with them. It was actually his father, Yaakov Herzl, that suggested he publish his pamphlet to the Jewish mass. After all, it was the public he was trying to convince, and they would be the ones to make the move anyway. So Herzl underwent another round of editing and published it today on February 14, 1896, with a new title, The Jewish State. This was a shocking title, for nothing of this notion had ever been mentioned before. It almost implied fantasy, which Herzl was quick to challenge in his preface, saying that it was no utopia or fantasy, rather those who will it will have it. Am I stating what is not yet the case? Am I before my time? Are the sufferings of the Jewish people not yet grave enough? We shall see. It depends on the Jews themselves whether this political pamphlet remains for the present a political romance. If the present generation is too dull to understand it rightly, a future, finer, and a better generation will arise to understand it. The Jews who wish for a state shall have it, and they will deserve to have it. In the introduction, Herzl claims that being Jewish does not only mean that one practices Judaism, but also that one is physically part of a Jewish race. A Jew is a Jew, whether he likes it or not. Choosing to identify as a non-Jew is pointless. We are a people, one people. Thus, whether we like it or not, we are now, and shall henceforth remain, a historic group with unmistakable characteristics common to us all. We are one people. Our enemies have made us one without our consent, as repeatedly happens in history. Distress binds us together, and thus united, we suddenly discover our strength. Yes, we are strong enough to form a state, and indeed, a model state. He goes on to discuss how assimilation will never work. In vain are we loyal patriots. In vain do we strive to increase the fame of our native land in science and art, or her wealth by trade and commerce. In countries where we have lived for centuries, we are still cried down as strangers. It is useless, therefore, for us to be loyal patriots. If we could only be left in peace, but I think we shall not be left in peace. In Chapter 2, he discusses why previous attempts have failed, causes and effects of anti-Semitism, and his plan. Although Herzl was not opposed to establishing a Jewish state elsewhere, he writes that Palestine is our ever-memorable historic home, and a Jewish state in Israel would be most fitting after 18 centuries of Jewish suffering. Chapter 3 provides an in-depth detail and is titled The Jewish Company. It deals with purchase of land, building, commerce, methods of raising capital, and more. Chapter 3 includes Herzl's famous concept of a 7-hour day, which was that everyone takes a shift working for 7 hours a day. This way, work is being done around the clock. Chapter 4 is titled Local Groups and discusses emigration in stages by community. Every group will have its rabbi, traveling with his congregation. Our rabbis, on whom we especially call, will devote their energies to the service of our idea, and will inspire their congregations by preaching it from the pulpit. They will not need to address special meetings for this purpose, and appeals such as this may be uttered in the synagogue. And thus it must be done, for we feel our historic affinity only through the faith of our fathers. He then prophesies that our Jewish customs will be more vibrant in Israel, for we will no longer be influenced by our non-Jewish surroundings. For these habits are the thousands of fine delicate threads which together make up an unbreakable rope. When we journey out of Egypt again, we shall not leave the flesh pots behind. Every man will find his customs again in the local groups, but they will be better, more beautiful, and more agreeable than before. The fifth and final chapter is titled The Society of the Jews, which will act as a body of representatives to the whole world. He discusses the constitution, language, laws, army, flag, and more. It is in this section that modern-day Israel differs the most from Herzl's vision. Hebrew being the national language, the power of the Israeli Defense Force, the limited separation between church and state, the Israeli flag, are the most dissimilar to what Herzl detailed in Chapter 5. In his conclusion, Herzl offers rebuttals to the arguments he expects to receive and ends on a high note. The Maccabeans will rise again. Let me repeat once more my opening words. The Jews who wish for a state will have it. We shall live at last as free men on our own soil and die peacefully in our own homes. The world will be freed by our liberty, enriched by our wealth, magnified by our greatness, and whatever we attempt there to accomplish for our own welfare will react powerfully and beneficially for the good of humanity. These last few sentences about the universal benefit of a Jewish state were woven onto his coffindry when he was reburied in Jerusalem on Har Herzl, where I stand today, after the establishment of the state. Herzl never got to see the actualization of his dream, and for that, we must never stop acknowledging his legacy of selflessness and valor. This is what Ben-Gurion was trying to convey in his speech on May 14, 1948. When the state was taking her first breaths, she remembered the man and the book that wrote her into existence.